The quiet panic in Westminster, why the UK government fears losing the social contract. Parliament's own records reveal an unspoken anxiety. If people fall off the electoral register, the state loses consent and its authority. For a decade, British governments have spoken publicly about modernising democracy, improving voter accuracy and tackling fraud. But buried inside parliamentary debates is a different story, one of deep anxiety inside the HRH executive and government that millions of people are slipping out of the state's administrative gap. A fear that the social contract is collapsing, not through revolution, but through something far simpler. People not being on the electoral register, and the documents say so explicitly. The electoral register, Britain's social contract in disguise. In the UK's unwritten constitution, we often talk about rights, responsibilities and civic participation. But Parliament's own words reveal that the real foundation of British social contract isn't Magna Carta or constitutional tradition. It's something far more mundane, being on a list. Multiple MPs across multiple years have directly described electoral registration as a social contract, something for something, not something for nothing. Volume 592, Sadiq Khan, Electoral. Another MP describes registration as a symbol of engagement, showing that you are part of the mainstream, not on the margins. Volume 556, Electoral Registration. This framing is astonishing. To be recognised by the British state as a full participant in society, you must appear on an administrative register. Oh, I remember the days when I was a little girl and the teacher would call the register. Was that a little bit of pre-programming? Those who are not registered are not just missing voters, they become what MPs openly fear, an alienated community beyond the reach of the democratic system. Volume 529, Sadiq Khan, Electoral, and why Westminster panics when people fall off the register. And here in Hansard Records there is a repeated theme. The state loses control when people cannot be pinned to place. Local authorities rely on the register to assign council tax, verify benefit eligibility, conduct enforcement, determine jury service, shape constituency boundaries. In other words, the state authority rests on knowing where people are and who they are. One MP said the quiet part out loud. It is about tracking population movement. Volume 556, Electoral Registration. Another warned that failure to maintain these registers risks an enormous and growing alienated community in our society. Volume 592, Sadiq, Electoral. This is not an activist critique, it is Parliament acknowledging that without the administrative visibility provided by the electoral register, the government loses the practical tools of governance. Oh dear me. A crisis of consent that cannot be spoken out loud. The UK government cannot admit this publicly because to do so would undermine the narrative that registration is simply about making votes easier or improving accuracy. Yet Parliament's own language reveals the truth. Millions falling off the register equals millions drifting outside the social contract. Unregistered citizens equals people the state cannot trace, tax or enforce obligations upon. Unmatched or unverifiable individuals equals citizens the government cannot anchor to a fixed address. This is the real crisis, not voter apathy, but state anxiety. And that fear, anxiety and panic is palpable. A fear that the administrative foundation of government authority has eroded. invisibly, without a bullet, without a button. The push for digital ID is simply a response to that fear, that psychosis. The timing is not accidental. Even as millions fall off the electoral register, the government pushes harder for one login, digital identity verification, automated data matching, centralised databases, conditional access to services, and viewed through the lens of Hansard's parliamentary records, the reason becomes clear. Digital ID creates the visibility that the electoral registration used to provide. It's the state's attempt to rebuild the social contract, not by expanding access, but tightening control. And of course, when the busies, those wonderful officers in uniform, stop to search you, ask your name, they'll just take your phone and they'll just get all of the information they require, and then they can pin your name to a place. Eradicating Rice v. Connolly. And eradicating your human rights, which you never really had anyway, because, after all, who dictated what your rights are? Getting off that electoral register, getting out of that social contract, does that mean you reclaim your common law rights?